In September 2025, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia signed a defense agreement that many observers consider one of the most consequential security developments in West Asia and South Asia in recent years. While military cooperation between the two countries is not new indeed, it stretches back decades. The latest agreement formalizes their relationship at a much higher level of strategic commitment. Both nations pledged that an attack on one would be considered an attack on the other, thereby creating a mutual defense framework. This announcement has sparked global debate, with analysts interpreting it as anything from a historic game-changer in regional security architecture to a largely symbolic gesture aimed at signaling strength. This essay will serve as a tutorial-style guide to the agreement, unpacking its historical background, the key terms of the pact, its strategic context, potential nuclear dimensions, regional implications, open questions, and future scenarios. The analysis will aim to balance narrative explanation with critical reflection, so that by the end, you will have a deep understanding of why this pact matters, what it means, and where it may lead. Historical background: Pakistan-Saudi defense cooperation. To understand the 2025 agreement, one must first appreciate the long history of defense cooperation between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. The relationship dates back to the early years of Pakistan's independence. In the 1960s and 1972, Pakistan began sending military trainers, advisors, and troops to Saudi Arabia to assist in building the kingdom's armed forces. Saudi Arabia, for its part, has consistently supported Pakistan economically, especially during periods of financial stress. By the 1980s, the partnership had deepened. Pakistani forces were stationed in Saudi Arabia for defensive purposes, particularly during the Iran-Iraq War when Riyadh feared Iranian influence in the Gulf. The Gulf War of 1990–91 further cemented this cooperation, with Pakistan providing troops for the defense of Saudi territory, although it limited direct involvement in combat. Beyond conventional military cooperation, speculation has long surrounded the possibility of nuclear cooperation. Pakistan's nuclear program, developed in the 1970s and 1982, raised questions about whether Saudi Arabia, lacking its own program but possessing vast financial resources, might seek assurances from Islamabad. While no official agreement ever confirmed such a transfer of nuclear technology or weapons, the relationship created a perception in the strategic community that Pakistan could provide Saudi Arabia with a nuclear option in times of crisis. Thus, when the two nations announced a formal mutual defense pact in 2025, it was not seen as a sudden or unexpected move, but rather as the codification of decades of informal security cooperation. The 2025 Defense Agreement, key provisions. The pact signed in September 2025 has several notable features. Mutual defense commitment. The central clause of the agreement states that any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both. This creates a legal and political obligation similar in wording to Article 5 of the NATO Treaty. It suggests that both countries commit to come to each other's aid in case of external attack. Comprehensive military cooperation. The agreement pledges broader collaboration in training, intelligence sharing, joint exercises, and weapons development. While many of these elements existed before, they are now framed as integral to a long-term strategic partnership. Deterrence development. Both sides emphasize that the pact aims to strengthen joint deterrence, meaning their combined military capabilities should discourage adversaries from attacking either party. Nuclear dimension. Perhaps the most controversial element is Pakistan's statement that its nuclear program will be made available to Saudi Arabia according to this agreement. While deliberately vague, this phrase implies that in certain circumstances, Saudi Arabia might fall under Pakistan's nuclear umbrella. Openness to other states. Pakistani officials indicated that the agreement could serve as a model for other Arab states wishing to enter similar pacts. This raises the possibility of a broader security architecture with Pakistan at its core. Case-by-case flexibility. Importantly, the agreement leaves room for interpretation by emphasizing that the nature of response, conventional, defensive, or nuclear, will depend on the specific threat and circumstances. Strategic context. Why now? Several converging factors explain why Pakistan and Saudi Arabia chose to formalize this pact in 2025. 1. Regional security shifts. The Middle East has been experiencing escalating tensions, Israeli actions in Gaza and elsewhere, growing uncertainty about Iran's regional ambitions, and the fallout of conflicts in Yemen and Syria all contribute to a volatile environment. Saudi Arabia, despite significant military spending, has long sought reliable defense partners. With questions about the reliability of U.S. security guarantees, Riyadh saw an opportunity to institutionalize its partnership with Pakistan. 2. U.S. retrenchment and strategic diversification. Although the United States remains a major security actor in the Middle East, there is a perception among Gulf leaders that Washington is less willing to engage militarily in the region than in the past. Saudi Arabia's leadership, therefore, seeks to diversify its defense partnerships, balancing U.S. ties with links to Pakistan, China, and others. 3. Pakistan's strategic calculations. For Pakistan, the agreement brings both symbolic and material benefits. It elevates Pakistan's status as a security provider beyond South Asia, potentially securing economic aid and energy supplies from Saudi Arabia. Domestically, it boosts the image of the Pakistani military as a guarantor of Muslim unity and defender of Islamic holy sites. For nuclear signaling. The nuclear dimension of the pact also reflects regional insecurities. Saudi Arabia has long feared that Iran's nuclear ambitions could alter the balance of power in the Gulf. By linking itself to Pakistan, the only Muslim-majority country with nuclear weapons, Riyadh signals that it has access to deterrence without developing its own arsenal. The nuclear question, umbrella or ambiguity. The nuclear clause of the agreement is perhaps its most debated feature. Analysts disagree on how far the pact goes. Umbrella interpretation. Some interpret the agreement as Pakistan extending its nuclear umbrella over Saudi Arabia. This would mean that in case of a major threat to Saudi Arabia, Pakistan could threaten nuclear retaliation on its behalf. Ambiguity interpretation. Others argue the language is deliberately vague, leaving room for symbolic reassurance without binding commitments. Pakistan may not want to risk its nuclear assets for Saudi Arabia, but by hinting at such protection, it provides psychological comfort. Proliferation concerns. The pact has raised alarm in the international community about possible nuclear proliferation. Critics worry it could encourage other states to seek similar arrangements, undermining the global non-proliferation regime. Regional implications. 1. Impact on Iran. Iran is likely to see the pact as a hostile move. Given its rivalry with both Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Tehran may respond by strengthening its ties with groups like the Houthis in Yemen or with states such as Syria and Russia. 2. Impact on India. India views Pakistan's external defense alignments with caution. The idea that Pakistan could gain Saudi financial or military backing might complicate India's strategic calculations. Moreover, if Saudi Arabia is effectively under a Pakistani nuclear umbrella, India must consider the implications for its own deterrence. 3. Impact on Israel. Israel, increasingly engaged in Gulf security discussions, may view the pact as a complication. It could push Israel closer to some Gulf states while simultaneously heightening its mistrust of Saudi intentions for intra-Gulf dynamics. Other Gulf states may feel pressured to either join similar agreements or distance themselves to avoid antagonizing Iran. The United Arab Emirates, for instance, may calculate its security differently than Riyadh. Open questions and uncertainties. Despite its strong language, the agreement leaves several issues unresolved. What exactly constitutes aggression? Does it include cyber attacks, terrorism, or internal unrest? How automatic is the defense response? Is it guaranteed or subject to case-by-case political decisions? Will Saudi Arabia gain access to nuclear technology or merely political assurances? How will external powers such as the US and China respond? Could this pact inspire a broader security bloc involving more Arab states? Potential scenarios strengthen deterrence. If taken seriously by adversaries, the pact could enhance stability by deterring attacks on either Pakistan or Saudi Arabia. Escalation risks. Alternatively, if adversaries challenge the pact, the obligation to respond could drag both countries into wider conflicts. A symbolic effect only, the pact may remain largely declaratory, with little practical impact on military operations, but useful as a diplomatic signal. Nuclear crisis. In the worst case, a crisis could test the nuclear dimension of the pact, forcing Pakistan to make choices with global consequences. Conclusion: a historic but ambiguous step. The Pakistan-Saudi Arabia Defense Pact of 2025 is both a natural outgrowth of decades of cooperation and a bold new step into formal alliance politics. It underscores Saudi Arabia's desire to diversify security guarantees and Pakistan's ambition to expand its role as a Muslim world security provider, yet its ambiguity particularly regarding nuclear assurances means that its impact will depend on future crises. For students of international security, this pact offers a textbook case of how alliances can serve both deterrent and symbolic functions, how nuclear ambiguity can be used strategically, and how regional security complexes evolve in response to shifting great power dynamics.